So you think you're done, right? You've spent all this time crafting the perfect questionnaire, and every question seems just right. But hold on. We're not ready to launch just yet. In fact, some of the most critical make-or-break steps happen right now, after you've written the draft, but before a single person answers it. We're going to walk through these final stages that turn a good questionnaire into a great one.
And this quote right here, this is the whole ballgame. Think of it like building a house. Once the concrete for the foundation is poured and set, you can't go back and fix it. It's done. Same thing with your research. Once you start collecting data, that's it. Any fundamental mistakes in your questionnaire are locked in, forever tainting your results. So getting this part right before you launch is absolutely everything.
Okay, so our first big job is what I call forging the final instrument. And I use the word forging on purpose. This is not just a quick proofread. Oh no, this is like a blacksmith meticulously hammering out a high-precision tool, one that's designed for one very specific job, to get you exactly the data you need and nothing you don't. Now, every investigator serves a master, and this slide shows you exactly who that is. On the left, you have your study objectives and your analysis plan. That's the boss. On the right, you have your questionnaire draft. Every single question on that draft has to directly serve an objective on the left. You've got to be ruthless here. If you find a question, even one you love, that doesn't map directly to an objective, it's gone. And if you realize your analysis plan requires a variable you forgot to ask about, you better add that question right back in.
Now, this is not a solo mission. You need to assemble your own team of superheroes, your expert review panel. Each person brings a unique power. Your colleagues? They're great for spotting weird phrasing or logical gaps. Your field workers and data collectors, these are the folks on the front lines. They'll tell you immediately if a question feels awkward or if the flow is just plain confusing. And then you have the statistician.
Bringing in a statistician at this stage is an absolute pro move. They do so much more than just look at numbers. They're checking your coding system. They're making sure the type of data you're collecting, categorical, continuous, whatever, is actually going to work with the statistical tests you have planned. This one step can save you from the absolute nightmare of finishing your study with a mountain of beautiful data that is completely and heartbreakingly useless for analysis.
All right, let's say your instrument is polished and perfect, in English. But what if your participants speak Malayalam, or Tamil, or Hindi? Well, that brings us to our next critical phase, the back translation process. This is how we make sure our questions mean the exact same thing, no matter the language. And let me be crystal clear, this is a non-negotiable golden rule of good research. You must give the questionnaire to people in their own primary language. You can't just assume they'll figure it out in English. Trying to do that is just a recipe for confusion and ultimately bad data. So, how do we make sure our translation is perfect? We use this really clever, meticulous process. Step 1, you get your original English questionnaire translated into the local language. Simple enough, but here's the magic step. Step 2, you give that new local language version to a completely independent person, someone who's never seen the original, and have them translate it back into English. Then, you just compare the two English versions, your original and the one that just came back. And what are we looking for in that comparison? Well, here's the goal. It's not about getting a perfect word-for-word match. Languages just don't work that way. What you're fighting for is equivalence in meaning. Does the back-translated question capture the exact same feeling, the same nuance, the same core idea as your original? If the answer is yes, then congratulations, your translation is solid. Okay, we've got a finalized, perfectly translated tool. We're so close. But before we launch this thing for real, we have to run one final dress rehearsal. This is the pre-flight checklist for your questionnaire, and we call it pilot testing. So what is pilot testing? It's really simple. It's a trial run. You take your beautiful finished questionnaire and you go out and use it on a small group of volunteers. The key here, and this is super important, is that these volunteers have to be from a population that's very similar to your actual study group. This is your one chance to see how your tool actually performs in the wild. And what are we looking for? A few really practical things. First, clarity. Do people actually understand what on earth you're asking them? Second, acceptability. Is there a question in there that's accidentally offensive or just makes people really wary of answering? Third, we check the flow and mechanics. You know those tricky skip patterns? Like if you answered yes, go to question 15. Do they actually work, or do they just confuse your poor interviewer? And finally, we get to something that sounds minor, but is actually a huge deal.
time assessment. The pilot test lets you put a stopwatch on the whole process. How long does it actually take to complete one full questionnaire? Knowing that number is absolutely essential for planning your logistics, for budgeting your time and money, and for managing your field team.
Now, as we're doing all this incredibly useful pilot testing, there is one paramount rule. It is the golden rule, and it is completely unbreakable. It's all about protecting the integrity of your final data. So let me just ask you this directly. These people, these wonderful volunteers who helped you find all the kinks in your questionnaire, is it okay to just roll their data into your main study analysis? What do you think? The answer is a loud, clear, and absolute no. The volunteers from your pilot test are heroes. They've helped you immensely, but their job is done. Under no circumstances can they ever be included in the main study population. And here's the really simple reason why. Think about it. These volunteers are now different. They've seen the questions. They've thought about the concepts. They are no longer a fresh subject. They've been pre-exposed. Including them would introduce a huge bias that could seriously poison your results and undermine all of your hard work. So you see how it all fits together? By obsessively tying your questions to your objectives, by ensuring true meaning with careful translation, and by testing everything out in a real-world pilot study, you are building a rock-solid foundation. This whole process is what guarantees that the data you finally collect is reliable, it's valid, and it's ready for some serious analysis.
To solidify your understanding, practice the MCQs available on the BCBR app.